So First Republic Bank is in deep trouble. The shares are dropping like a stone. And I'm calling it right now. Stay the frick away from this bank. It's headed to FDIC receivership. It's game over. There's no way this bank is getting out of this. And let me explain why in a second. Look, the Federal Reserve just came out today saying that Silicon Valley Bank was 100% the fault of the management of that bank. And at the same time, the mainstream media is playing along and kind of depicting this whole thing as an incident, and as an isolated incident. That First Republic is another isolated incident in a chain of many isolated incidents, and there's no real banking crisis in the US. Now, I'm here to tell you, as somebody with no agenda, I'm not trying to sell nothing. I'm not on mainstream media. I can give less fucks about what they say. I worked for over 10 years in the financial sector as a senior financial analyst. I've seen how these things play out, and I've seen mainstream media play along with this bullshit.
So if you want to speculate on a Chinese IPO, you've got my blessing to bet on Didi. I would try to get as many shares as you can. DI.
10 seconds later.
Didi saying that it will finally drop its U.S. listing.
Much later.
I can't recommend buying stocks in a communist regime.
You're being played, and I'm going to actually tell you how things are because, I don't care. Things are very simple right now. The Federal Reserve basically fucked the entire banking system, and now they're blaming the management of SVB. Now, of course, the management of SVB is at fault. They absolutely were reckless, careless, absolutely idiotic, no risk management, absolutely boneheaded decisions, and that's why they went first. But I would say that it's a 50% fault of the Fed of what happened, because SVB is not alone in this. Signature Bank is not alone. First Republic is not alone. The Federal Reserve caused this, and the banks to fall first were the banks where the management was abysmal. Of course, SVB management was abysmal, but absolving yourself from responsibility is absolutely crazy. So the Federal Reserve does an investigation, investigating itself and saying that they did nothing wrong and it was all the management. Surprise, surprise. And the mainstream media is playing along with this nonsense as always. Now look, here's what's actually happening. Here's what happened, and here's how this thing plays forward, going forward. Look, it's very simple. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, First Republic Bank, they're all in the same situation. If you look at the balance sheet, First Republic Bank lost over 40% of their deposits in a single quarter in 2023. And I'm sure they're not alone. They're not the only bank to suffer that fate. Many other regional banks have suffered similar fates because of the Fed. Because the Fed spiked interest from 0 to 5 in a single year, because the Fed didn't do it slowly like they should have when they were playing the transitory game.
In the end, it will be transitory.
346 minutes later.
I think it's probably a good time to retire that word and try to explain more clearly what we mean.
Oh, not a problem.
When they could have slowly risen the interest, but they did it all at once in a single year. And by doing that, they caused two things that collapsed the regional banking system. And now it's being held on life support with the Fed basically praying for some sort of a miracle. Look, what they did by spiking the interest rates to 5% in a single year is two things. Number one, they made money market accounts much more attractive. You can get 4 or 5% right now by basically having the same risk profile, putting your money in treasuries instead of 0.5% in a savings account. Jesus Christ, who wouldn't do that? So all this money is coming out of the banks to money market accounts because the Fed raised the interest rates. At the same time, the Fed went to the banks in March 2020 and told them, hey, you don't have to hold any reserves to cover the cash deposits you have. So people deposit money. They used to have a 10% deposit threshold. Basically, the bank had to hold at least 10 cents on the dollar per deposits. But the Fed said, you don't have to do it anymore. Go to zero. And also, buy the treasuries. That's the safest place to put your money, Mr. Bank. So all the banks did that, cleared their entire thing. You can look at the chart right now, and you can see that most American banks are below 10%. The Fed told them to do that. And most American banks are deep into treasuries. They took all these deposits and put them in treasuries. What happened when the Fed went from 0% interest to 5% interest in a single year? All these treasuries went to... Price went down. And now they're sitting on a bunch of horseshit. Now, these treasuries in aggregate accumulated a 1.7 trillion unrealized losses for the entire U.S. banking system. Now, somebody has to pay this money. So the banks are currently stuck with 1.7 trillion of unrealized losses sitting on these treasury bonds. They have no liquidity because the banks cleared everything out when the Fed told them you don't have to hold any reserves. And now also the money is actually flowing from the banks to the money market accounts, and also money is flowing from the regional banks to the big four banks because people are terrified. So these regional banks are getting fucked from every possible direction. And it's absolutely insane that everybody here is thinking that this thing is over. It's not. It's just the beginning. First Republic is just the beginning. So they gave it $30 billion to kind of band-aid the problem, but it's not over yet. It's not over yet, and it's not going to be over until the Fed reduces interest rates. And that they cannot politically do without exposing this whole fucking game I just told you about. Now, don't let these guys fool you. Understand what's going on and stay away from First Republic.